Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Welcome to noise music that you can punch walls and fight cops to. My name is gluexsniffer. We've got a good episode lined up for you here today. We'll be listening to my conversation with SQUONK, a noise project out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and we'll be listening to their latest recording at the time of this recording, titled Self-Portrait Loud Noises. So once again, thanks for tuning in, and let's start with the interview. Also, before the interview begins, I would like to preemptively ask for everyone's forgiveness. I am an idiot and have not properly figured out how to record interviews, not like a complete fucking moron. So it's not going to sound the greatest, but the words are what's important. If you're listening to this, you listen to noise music. So if you're here for hi-fi shit, you're in the wrong fucking place. But I do apologize, and the interviews from here on out will likely begin to sound better. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. My name is gluexsniffer, and I'm here sitting down across the internet, but still sitting down with JM here as SQUONK. Say hello to everyone.
Hello.
How's it going today?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So
It's going well.
why don't you give the listeners here a bit of a lowdown of what SQUONK is and who you are?
All right. Well, SQUONK is a two-piece. I guess it's a two-part project. It's a two-piece guitar and drums, noisy metal, loud rock project. I hate describing my own music, but there's also an element of me doing solo noise drone metal as well. So similar in nature, but definitely different, very different in feel. Um, but both are equally important to SQUONK, and so it's a place to get kind of both of my passions out.
So SQUONK effectively exists as like a two-headed hydra. Like there's two separate pillars to SQUONK overall.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I also need to note that whoever, I assume that it was you, and if it was, I really want to applaud the fact that I think SQUONK is one of the best words I've heard in many years in general.
That's why I think we chose it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because yeah, I from the second that I saw the post of, um, because I commented on your post for self portrait loud noises, and ever since
Oh,
I
thank
just
you.
saw that title written, it was just I was like, yeah, SQUONK, I need to talk to this guy.
Well,
So
I'm glad that drew you in.
yeah, absolutely, and I'm very glad that I listened. So I guess I'll start with something a bit more for you to kind of go off of. So why what do you think it is that has kind of brought you to making the kind of music that you do now? Because I feel like lots of people that I've talked to in the past, and for myself as well, there's always some sort of musical like catalog that you could almost follow that brings you to what you do now. So how do you think you landed on this sort of experimental complete aggregate of different kinds of noise and metal to what you make now?
Well, I think that's a question that's most succinctly answered. We're saying like I just make the music I want to hear, and so like you said, there's a journey over time, and and in your music tastes and your research, if that's the way you consume music, and it leads you to having a taste, and if your taste is either broad enough or hyper specific, you kind of reach a point where it's like, oh, I want to make music too. And what kind of music do you want to make when you're really passionate? It's like what you want to hear. And so I fell in love, over time with music that had more noise and more edge and more volume. And I like a lot of different scenes, but never felt fully invested in one enough to only listen to that kind of music and go to those kind of shows and hang out with those kind of people, because you only develop into that kind of person, quote unquote, if you spend enough time in singularity. So, you know, I tried to absorb as much as I could, and then my musical output to be as specific to my experience as I could, or as I can, I guess. So I think that's why it's like hard to describe, because it's just me, or in the two-piece case, it's me and Joe, because he and I spend 1 or 2 days a week together, 4 hours, 3 hours jamming.
Right.
Whether it's our written stuff or just like, you know, improvising for 15 minutes on that style of music. But it's that kind of following your passions and outputting, you know, a singular idea from all of the different things you're digesting. Like, that's what we're really trying to do with SQUONK, or at least I'm trying to do. And Joe's just a fucking great drummer who we really vibe together.
So Joe is a musical equivalent partner, but he's also kind of just like your ringer. Like, he's good for you to realize the vision that you have.
Yeah, I think, to be quite honest, that's why we've stayed a two-piece. Not that a third, you know, like a bass player traditionally would be the next piece you add. Like, you know, it's not that we are opposed to it in any way. It's just we have found such a synergy, you know, in improvising, and we've jammed with a few people, and it like sounded good, but the elements of SQUONK that we really liked,
the gel wasn't,
you know, it just wasn't quite there. It could have been familiarity, but you know, we're in our early 30s, so it's not like we're free to jam every night anymore. You know, it's like that one jam session a week I get with Joe is special, you know, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's something you can look forward to during the rest of the week.
Yeah, you got it. And it's something we spend a lot of time on outside of it, you know, in our instruments and writing, and that's kind of why the drone thing comes in, because there's an equal passion there on my part, but it's something I can do when I have free time. I don't need to coordinate with someone else.
Yeah, exactly. And also, so speaking as somebody whose primary and first instrument was bass, not important. Don't worry about it.
Me too, though.
Okay, so yeah, so you know better than anyone. So
I mean, I love the bass. Yeah, if I had 4 hands and could play it both at the same time, you know, I would just do that.
That'd make for a hell of a live show.
Yeah, there's just too much like of our feel, you know. I couldn't just sample a bass track or play along. I mean, nobody wants that anyway, but
no,
you know that. I mean, one of my favorite anythings of music is like 70s Miles Davis, like when he was really doing the free jazz, but fusion free jazz, where it was groovy and loud and noisy, and all the things, all the ways I would describe my music, loud and noisy, but obviously, you know, it's sounding completely different. That's such a fucking great era of music. And so that like element of improv, but with a groove and with something pre-written, as well as having the improvisation. I mean, yeah, that's something you could say about all jazz, but you know what I mean.
Right. So actually, I guess that kind of brings me into a good segue, because just a little anecdotal story that'll kind of set up this next question. But I once got asked to play a noise set in a city that's about 3 hours south of where I live, and I said, yeah, absolutely. And I, you know, packed up all my stuff and I went down to this other city to go play. And they told me, yeah, you're going to be third in the lineup of 5. And I said, oh, okay, cool. And so I had to sit there and watch the first 2 acts. And the entire bill, except for me, was 4 or more people free jazz outfits. And I wasn't told that. And it was very weird. But as I sat there and watched, I kind of did actually see
a similarity, or at least a similar like root point for both of the
Oh,
things that we were doing.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't there to hear for sure, but conceptually, free jazz and noise are, it's like telling the same story from with a different language.
Yeah, basically. And I mean, I really wish all of the very clearly older people that were there to just see jazz also saw it that way, because I looked up and the room was pretty barren in the middle of my set. But my main point is just I wanted to preface this because you had mentioned that sort of free jazz thing. So there's a lot of aspects to both heads of the Hydra of SQUONK that I hear from the noise side and then from the two-piece side, where is there an element of improvisation to the two-piece side of SQUONK? And if there is that your best route to really just is that really just the most direct route to get the music from inside of your head to out in the world?
I think that's a great question. We've definitely bounced that around in a lot of different ways, but we are actually having our debut show June 18th, which I don't know if that'll be before or after this airs, but the debut show, we're not going to do tons of improvisation. There will be I would say an element of feel going on, whether it's, in terms of feel itself, how fast or slow the song goes, or where parts speed up or slow down, because they were written to have that kind of natural flow.
Right.
And these songs were born out of improvisational jams in a lot of ways, or taking one idea and jamming on it for 15 minutes, ending up starting on the North Pole and ending up on the South Pole in terms of the jam, but you do it for 7 weeks, and then it starts to feel the same all the time. And so these songs are songs born from jams. And so I wouldn't say there's a huge improvisational element, but we have goals to blend the two in a balance that communicates, I think, the importance of improvisation, because I believe in it as an idea and like a valuable, as a valuable musical tool and language that I think is lost in a lot of modern music, but not all modern music, of course.
Right.
But a lot of modern popular music,
Well, I mean, sure. And I mean, I don't really think that it's not quite fair to I don't think it's quite fair to sort of pit improv and pre-written music against each other, but I do believe that that free improvisation in music, whether it's working on stuff yourself or when you're able to share that language with another musician, I think that that's something that truly that people who genuinely love music can also feel, and they can hear that when they listen to one or more musicians speaking that language.
Well, I think that's a great point. That's why a band like the Grateful Dead is so popular, because I think they were able to blend the two in a way that was just almost unmatched, blending popular music, of the time. Folk, the Grateful Dead were ultimately singing folk songs,
Right.
But just playing it in a way that was rock and roll, and the Johnny Be Good and things like that, but playing it for 8 minutes or 9 minutes, adding that improvisational element. You look at how big Grateful Dead crowd fans are, massive amount of people really enjoyed that blend of pre-written and improvisation.
It also helps that I think the Grateful Dead were very aware of the fact that 99% of their fan base was going to be listening to their shit on acid.
That's true, but that's true, very true. But the Dead themselves, if they're to be believed, a lot of them stopped taking acid way before, their touring slowed down or anything like that. And, well, I think they were capitalizing on it. I don't know
of course.
I just think that, there was an element of authenticity there as well, because
Yeah, I'm not talking down on it. I'm just saying that's another layer to them understanding the audience that they cultivated.
true, yeah. But they did space, and drums and two songs, quote unquote songs that are ultimately just noise pieces, improvisational noise pieces. There's no popular music within that. I think there was a long period of time where the Grateful Dead's improvisation wasn't just a noodle, after the song and an extra long noodle after the song. I think
Right.
there was a time of, definitely like, style fusion, bringing two ideas together that weren't there before, three ideas that weren't there before, and things like that. But, really, they're just an example for the greater idea that.
Yeah.
So I think, that balance is important, but the reason the balance is important is because improvisational music is vital.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think in Jesus, I think another good segue is to acknowledge that yes, we are dealing with your project with SQUONK, which tagged as black metal, black gaze, experimental, drone, noise pop, post metal, shoegaze, stoner metal, stoner rock, and of course the best genre out there, Harrisburg. But
yeah, Harrisburg.
So we're discussing SQUONK, but so far we've really compared things that are very, very outside of that genre. And especially when I go back and listen to the earlier releases, like when I listened to the SQUONK demo, and even when I listened to New Evil, I definitely hear a lot of different influences that overlap each other in a way that doesn't feel unnatural. And there's plenty of really, really gimmicky music out there that tries to blend a bunch of different genres for the sake of blending those genres. But I think what is interesting about SQUONK is that I would even there's tags that I would probably place on your music for influentially that I don't see there, because when I listen to the SQUONK demo, I almost get this sort of air of maybe like an early demo from like a early 90s like Scrams band, like an early demo of like Page 99 or something. So
okay, yeah.
So having said that, like what other influence, because with those sort of tags, like the influences are probably pretty obvious, but what do you think are some other influences that you would tell people to bear in mind while listening to SQUONK to create a better experience for themselves?
For sure. I think it's a great question, a great setup too. I appreciate that a lot, because I think I mentioned two big influences that you might not expect. That Miles Davis and John McLaughlin and that '70s era jazz fusion, Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea, Return to Forever, and that stuff has been a huge influence on me from probably the time I was a teenager. I almost went to college for jazz guitar, so that was kind of the biggest era of jazz that like connected with me in a deeper way that still resonates today. I definitely had a big Grateful Dead period. The '70s too, like that '70s era Grateful Dead is a big influence, or has been in the past. The Jay Reatard is another one that comes to mind right away. A guy out of Memphis, garage punk, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, that's a pretty succinct tag for him.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I think Jay Reatard is just was, rest in peace, was just fucking brilliant.
R.I.P.
I love hip hop. Yeah. Not to move on too quickly, but I love like early 2000s Stones Throw hip hop, like MF Doom, Madlib, Jay Dilla, all of their projects, J Lib, Quasimodo, Mad Villain might be the greatest hip hop album ever.
It's really funny that you bring that up because I need to clarify that we're not doing this call over video, and we haven't had that much of a conversation before we started recording. And the first thing that you name dropped was Stone's Throw and then Doom, and you can't see the fact that I have a wearable MF Doom mask hanging on my wall and a mask tattoo on my arm.
No shit. Hey, that is synergy, man. That's beautiful.
Yeah, see? We'll pop we could do a SQUONK tape together.
Hell yeah. I would definitely be into that. But
so I do actually. There was another thing I wanted to touch on, and I'm kind of reaching further back into the conversation here. Don't worry, my memory's not actually this good. I'm writing stuff as we're doing this. My memory's not this good at all. But earlier in the interview, you were talking about finding it difficult to place yourself into like a scene and sort of define yourself in this sort of singular way. So, do you think that creating music that does not fit into these singular scenes, that you would feel out of place performing at X type of show or Y type of show? Do you feel like that for your own values and your own musical sense that is actually a good thing?
I think it's I wouldn't say it's a good or bad thing. I think it just is what it is, and other bands way better than us have been through it successfully, and bands way better than us have probably failed and we've never heard of them. But because it's a weird thing to go through, and it happens on a bunch of levels, whether it's a successful band trying to become a pop band, or a band starting out just trying to get into their local scene, or whatever. Like, it can be a good thing. I definitely think it can be a good thing. And having done that, like always being into noise music or being in experimental bands of some variety growing up, like experienced that on a few small levels, and it wasn't like a bad thing, It might suck we got kicked out of a coffee shop one time, or you had your experience clearing the room, but like, it builds character, it builds adversity, all that shit your dad would say.
Oh yeah, all those dad quotes. The pub that unplugged, that actually shut the power off on my noise duo halfway through a set, I think was one of my set notes.
Yeah, we played a VHS of the Bible, the old Charlton Heston. I think he was Moses.
Oh right, yeah.
VHS of the Bible. In this Christian coffee shop that was doing acoustic noise music. We were like 16 or something, and just got into doing noise music, and that was the only place we could think of to go, because we had friends playing acoustic music there, and they came up and asked, hey, can you guys turn it down? And so we turned it down a little bit, and they kept making noise, and then not 30 seconds later they came up and said, the owners just asked if you guys could just leave. So we packed up, hung our heads in shame, and left, and had a good laugh. It was great.
Oh, that's one of those experiences that you feel like it was embarrassing, but you're doing something right.
Exactly. Yeah, we pursued that passion and kept going with the noise music long after that.
So, what do you? I'm just trying to think of the proper way to word this, but I find that a lot of the time, people who are like other musicians tend to not be super into the genre of music that they themselves make. I mean, it's not fair to say that they're not into it, but it's not something that people like primarily listen to. And it sounds a little odd at first, because you would think that if you make a certain type of music that you would be knowledgeable and really be listening to that type of stuff. But I mean, man, being in a noise band and like only listening to noise music and really diving yourself into the noise, like that sounds fucking exhausting, man. But
yeah,
but even from that, like, what would, if someone were to just ask you personally, you know, I hear you make noise music. Like, what's some other noise music that I should check out? Like, what direction would you send someone?
Oh man. Well, I think I'd send someone to my influences first, just because that's what you always do. And Pocahontas is the first noise band that comes to mind. I just was blown away when I heard Pocahontas at 15 or 16. And then they were affiliated with Robe Door. It was just another awesome drone band. Like, are you familiar with either of those?
I'm passingly familiar with Pocahontas.
Okay. Yeah, when I first heard them, they were making like tribal psych drone, very melodic but rhythmic, and Robe Door was more like wall of noise drone, but that might even not be the right way to describe it. I'll leave you guys to look it up on the internet. They're fantastic. But you know, some of the classics like Sun-O, I still listen to Sun-O. I think that album they did with Attila, Black One, and the one they did with Boris, Alter, those are both fucking great albums.
The one they did with Scott Walker was really good too.
I'll have to check that out. I have not heard that one.
Oh yeah, I have that. I'm actually looking at the vinyl of it right now because it's currently on my now playing stand. But yeah, Sun and Scott Walker is definitely one to check out.
Sick. I will listen to that next. Yeah, I also, anything that Bilal Macabre puts out, he and I are from the same town, and we're in some bands together and growing up, and he still makes, I say still like anything happened, but he makes a fucking amazing music that borders on noise, isn't quite outright noise, but anything he's putting out is something that people need to listen to.
And then what would you say that you would point people towards that isn't noise? What would be on JM's recommended listening list?
Oh man, Essentials, like Fugazi, I think is a band that people have accidentally forgotten about. Maybe younger people especially need to remember Fugazi as pillars of rock and alternative music from the moment they started onward. Like,
absolutely.
I fucking love Fugazi. Every member of that band, and everything they've done afterwards has been fantastic as well. Quirky was great. Aesthetics was great. You know, I hope somebody gives them $1 billion to reunite, though they'd probably not do it.
No, I don't think. I don't think they really would. Which is funny because there was, just because it was the opposite situation, but there was somebody who was trying to crowdsource like, what was it? I think it was like $10 million to make sure that Weezer never made music again.
That's harsh, man. I still will put on the Pinkerton album. That's a fucking, or even Maladroit's an underrated album. I dig Weezer.
But then I think it was the drummer hit that guy back and said, "Make it 20 and we'll think about it."
Hey, hey, yeah. If you offer enough cash, they can just make music in secret and get paid up front. That's the way they'll think about it.
Either that, or just rename the band Deezer and just keep going.
And just keep going, yeah.
So sorry. So the last part of the recommended listening was Fugazi.
Oh yes, thank you for Fugazi. Man, this is tough. Here, let me. Well, I guess let me think about some of those tags you had, because I do like. Well, if you love black metal, Dark Throne is a huge influence because I think they're a band that never stuck. You know, they created the blueprint and then ditched it as soon as it was cool to make music by their blueprint, you know?
Yeah, Fenriz seems like the kind of guy that if you really just fall in line with a blueprint, he wants nothing to do with you.
Yeah, and that's how, it's funny because that's how I've felt since before I knew Dark Throne, and that's what has kept me coming back to Dark Throne every time, is that philosophy is evident in every new album they make. Arctic Thunder was a great record. I forget the one after. It was an Old Star, that just fucking good music coming out 30 years after they started making amazing music.
Well, yeah, because Dark Throne is so much more than just Transylvanian Hunger.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, great record, you can't knock it. But at the same time, like, if that's all you've listened to, or the album, or the 4 albums on either side of it, I'm sorry, but you're still missing out on amazing music. There's many great. Circle the Wagons was a great album. The Underground Resistance, Valkyrie, is a fucking great song. My kids love that song.
That's Parenting 101, Dark Throne.
Oh yeah, Dark Throne, absolutely. And they know Transylvanian Hunger too, though they're not as thrilled by it. Valkyrie's a little more uplifting for a 6-year-old.
Yeah, generally speaking, you want, you don't want them diving into that world that young. They should probably, like, at least hit junior high before they, give up hope.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Or at least know what it sounds, or at least to know what it sounds like to give up hope.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that's kind of the thing about all of my favorite, like my the artists I'm like most passionate about is like, the way you described Fenris is like, if you're sticking to a blueprint, you can't create a new one. And if you're not trying at least to like create a new blueprint for yourself, keeping the scope realistic and not narcissistic, like just trying to make music for yourself that you want to hear that's not already in existence, that's how you avoid getting bored of your own music. Like, if I got stuck in making black metal that sounds good, but the reason it sounds good is because it's been made already, then it's just not really how I want to spend my time, and I don't think that it's going to result in, making any sort of like impact. And when I say impact, I just mean like for that ears it hits, whether it's the 4 between us on this call or, beyond that. Like, it's just art is something you have to pursue for art's sake, or else it's not art anymore.
Right, and I feel like that's where the outside looking into a lot of scenes that are kind of associated with this sort of thing, that's where they really get that whole fucking circle jerk, like, notion of these types of scenes, because it's everyone just self-referencing each other at some point or another.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, because some really good music scenes, that started with innovation, end up in that pattern. And I'm not going to pick on any one scene because it's been so long since I've been involved with any scenes or tried to be even around any scenes. Like, it's just not, it's okay to have preferences. It's just that gatekeeping will prevent innovation, and preventing innovation will result in stagnation, and then stagnation will result in death, and then your scene and your music will die. And so, like, it's just not a healthy mindset.
Yeah, it's one of those things that people desperately want to hold on to, no matter how much it's crashing exactly what they're trying to hold on to begin with.
But, it's the same thing, again, like a lot of my passions are old music, Sabbath and T-Rex, and God, I fucking love T-Rex. That's who I've been listening to today.
Hell yeah.
But like a lot of that 70s music, comes and goes in the 50 years since, because it's in style and out of style, and in style and out of style. But like, if you like it, incorporate it into your music. And if you feel black metal, because we've already talked about it once, or hardcore, or death metal, or if you don't like how popular this new style of deathcore is becoming, whatever, then make the music you want to hear. And if you don't know how to, then learn, because I'm sure you got plenty of time if you're online complaining about how your scene's going.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much just what it is. If you have enough time to gatekeep and complain about all the stuff that you're hearing, you have enough time to make what you think is going to be the best version of it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I'm blessed to come from a like medium-sized city in Pennsylvania in the U.S. I live in the capital or near the capital and of the state, and it's it's like diverse. It's fairly diverse, though there's still the typical American issues at times. With that, we have a lot of crossing in musical styles that breed some really cool music, and unfortunately it usually either ends up in a big city and then gets big, or people move away and join some other big city scene. But I've seen some amazing music come out of this town that in this area that not like there's not a lot of gatekeeping here, at least that I've seen. Not since I was 15 or 16 and emo was the thing. But I think the internet breeds the idea that it may be more prevalent than it is, and maybe it is in some pockets of local scenes. But I hope and think, I'm optimistic that it's fading, because all music is genre, almost post-genre at this point, right?
Yeah. So then, I guess just in regards to that, like, why do you think that it's what are your thoughts on the idea of the internet being used as a tool for bands that can't quite, for one reason or another, break into a local scene, or are just not actually local to a scene that they care about? What are your thoughts on being able to use the internet in that way? Like, do you think that it's a positive thing because there's still a platform for them to gain attention for something that they might not otherwise? Or do you think it's negative that they're turning the attention away from what would be local to them and just seeking out who is going to accept them, as opposed to pushing that forward in their own locality?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And coming up when I did, like, the old idea still really existed of, flyers and like printed flyers and burned CDs and, like your feet to the ground, kind of getting into your local scene and playing the two little places in your town as often as you could, as often as they would have you. And like the scene was just like, for us, we were in Animal Collective kind of style noise rock bands or post-rock bands, Explosions in the Sky, and like there were no other bands like that in our area at the time. They existed, obviously, but not anywhere near us. And we just played with bands who also didn't have, because like we talked about before, if you're into music if you're into other music other than what you're making, and you notice that you're not seeing other bands in your area like what you're making, that might be a win, because then you're able to go out and be the only band like that. People might like music like that, and it might just be the two promoters in town haven't clicked your email because they've gotten 20 other ones.
Right.
So you kind of got to go out. You got to go out too. And so the internet's a great way to put the music in the hands of people who like your genre. But you'll find the most rewarding experience by getting out there and being the only band and clearing the room once or twice because you made weird music, and finding your people, because they do exist in your town. You just might not have met them yet.
Right. All it takes is, one guy walking by the venue while you're playing, or the bartender mentions at another place that he bartends at that, like, yeah, these guys played something a lot like this, and he says it to the right person. Like, it's just, all it takes is one person talking to another person who puts the words into the hands of someone who can do something about it. Or if that's not the case, then I feel like for a lot of people, at least younger people who want to start doing like local music, like they think of people who put on shows, and they think of like these people who just run DIY, like this these people present and then just put a bill together. Like
Right.
it's just some guy who has some people's phone numbers, you know. Like
I was just gonna say we did two noise fests, as we called it, and there are other noise fests. But back in 2007 or 8, like the internet wasn't widely used enough that we at least weren't aware of any other noise fests. But
right.
it was just like called a bunch of people, had some people drive in, from a little bit out of town, and we just put it on. We didn't even ask the park for permission, which one of the two times ended up being a slight issue. But we cleaned up, and but it's a small town, and so like there was no conflict. It was at a weird time of year, so it was a little cold. So it's not like there were any kids' birthday parties or anything, and But you just put on the show yourself, and especially if you're young, you'll find out you have a little more opportunity now to fall under people's good graces, than when you turn 32,
Yeah.
and when you're 16 and 18, 14, whatever, go play at your school. It might feel lame, but like those are the opportunities to take advantage of, because those people will get older, and if their tastes aren't good right now, their tastes will develop as they grow up. You're just one of the lucky ones who got into cool music early. You don't have to be a dick about it or complain about it, because like truly having good music and having access to good music is a blessing, and that in and of itself is the victory. And being able to share it with people will come when it's supposed to come, if you're on the right path and pursuing it in a genuine way.
Right, because yeah, not every kid has the good graces to have Dark Throne forced upon them at the age of 6.
No, and ironically, my kids will probably end up, loving JoJo Siwa too much because I pushed Dark Throne on them. But it's okay, because I liked the Backstreet Boys when I was 7, and I turned out okay. I like Future.
I was gonna say, if you're trying to imply that the Backstreet Boys don't go hard, I think this call's over.
No, I'm saying they go hard, and things that maybe I look at now with some chagrin, like that my kids are listening to at 6, because I want them to listen to Dark Throne.
Right.
I say that as much for myself, I guess, is my point, as anyone else.
Oh, that's awesome. I think we've got a pretty good scope and a pretty good idea of what your take on music as an art form and your philosophy on music as a whole. I think we've got a pretty good grasp of what that is. So I think before we wrap up this recording, I'm gonna ask you one last question, and this will be kind of your ability to promote in an odd way. But
okay,
what would you hope that someone would walk away from SQUONK with?
That's the only time I've heard music like that before. I could pick out their influences probably, or maybe guess what they like, draw a few comparisons, but ultimately, I don't know that I've ever heard music exactly like that before. And we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's just, I would like it to be my fingerprint.
Well, and I think that comes across because I was, pacing around my apartment and, muttering to myself like a sane person earlier about how I feel like that's exactly what I got out of listening to SQUONK was, yeah, there's no way for me to quite pin this down and explain this to somebody, but that's because I can't think of anything that I could use as a comparison to this. The only comparison that I maybe had remotely was that the album cover for Self-Portrait Loud Noises looks like the album cover of some rap songs by Earl Sweatshirt. But other than that, like, there was no comparison that I could make. And then it kind of hit me that like, oh, that's also what the word squonk does.
So can I actually tell you what a squonk is?
Yeah, but please.
So it's a cryptid. You know that.
Yeah,
anyone who might
like
not,
Mothman.
Mothman, yeah, the Loch Ness Monster, Sasquatch. You know, so a creature of myth, as it were. And so, I guess in the early 20th century, some guy, who I'm sorry, person, I can't remember your name, but wrote a book of mythological creatures or cryptids in the United States. And so the squonk is the one from Pennsylvania, the state that I grew up in and have lived in almost my whole life. And it's a creature that it's about the size of a dog or a large pig, or a large dog or a large pig, I should say. It's naked, kind of like a naked mole rat with large folds of skin, and it's incredibly ugly. And it travels alone because it's so ugly. It's afraid of its reflection because it's so ugly. And it is, if it's seen by anyone, it will cry tears and dissolve itself with those tears. And my wife told me about it. From the name of it to the story about it, it just felt right. It felt applicable and relevant to like kind of my musical philosophy, which I didn't intend to form. It just kind of happened. I wasn't looking to form any music philosophy, but I like music a lot.
See, and that's one of the best cryptid stories I think I've ever heard in my life. And I think that absolutely is like a really, really perfect way to sort of put that explanation forward for what you use to identify your music as. I think that's pretty fucking spot on.
Thank you. I take that as a high compliment. Thank you.
It's also interesting too because anybody that I've said the word squonk to in the past like week and a half, nobody had said that. I had no idea that it was a cryptid. So it has an explanation and an ethos behind it, but it's obviously obscure enough. I mean, I live in the plains of Canada. I don't know why we would know Pennsylvanian folklore, but you know, we don't know anything about the Pennsylvanian hunger up here, but you know, it's it is good, and I really like that, and I think you have something really, really special with the whole package of what squonk is, what it identifies as, and what it sounds like, and that is exactly why I wanted to talk to you today.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate your kind words and your interest. And honestly, not platform, that's the wrong way to say it, because I don't intend to communicate anything except my ideas, which are things that I've gotten from other people and experiences of my own that, like, you know, trial and error. I fuck up a lot, but I just appreciate you letting me speak and share a little bit of my mind.
Absolutely. I think this is what I heard when I first heard squonk was something I hadn't heard before, and something that I definitely knew and could tell that the person or the people behind it had a lot more to say than just some whoosh noises.
Yeah, man. The noise and drone is a meditative experience, and if anyone gets something out of it listening to it, that's fucking fantastic. But to me, drone, it's in the moment for the person making it, and if you're there listening to it and feeling the vibrations, you know, the recording and experiencing the recording, that's a blessing, and that takes a special type of person. But I think anybody could really enjoy noise or drone if it's, you know, getting to them at the right level, and that's just for fun.
Yeah, I think actually that does. I think before we wrap this up, I think that does actually communicate a really good point that, you know, like noise and drone and that sort of thing, it really is a form of music that very, very few people can or will listen to in the same way that they listen to traditional music.
Yeah.
And I think that there's no way to really explain to anybody what the appeal of noise or drone is without that person having an open enough mind to want to find out what it is that makes it special and having that experience for themselves.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you think about where, to me, noise music is an early 20th century concept. You know,
Our man Luigi.
John Cage and Luigi, exactly. Yeah, it's not new, and making the noise the way that we make noise today is different than they did for sure. He didn't have samplers, but you know, John Cage stuck a fucking rubber duck in a piano and played it in an opera hall, and like, you know, 433. I mean, like, that shit is still rebellious as fuck. Like,
it's still relevant. You know, I have read the interview with John Cage where they asked him, like, is this, you know, is 433 like a serious piece? Is this a serious thing? And he says, this is just as serious as any of my other compositions, because and it's true. It's just as important to have that, I don't know, that ethos that can push you to make something like that.
Yeah. Oh, can you imagine, like, booking a show, not telling anyone, booking a show, and then when they say, all right, man, go ahead, you, like, sound check, you get all set up, and then you don't tell anyone, and you just stand there for 4 minutes and just stare at people. And if you're lucky enough to be booked at a show where there's people and you do this, like, and then just stare at them. Yeah, and then at 4 minutes and 33 seconds, you stop and you wave like you did something, you know?
And then pack up everything and leave.
Pack up everything and go. Thanks for everything, guys. You enjoyed it.
Me and one of my friends had an idea of effectively doing that, but we were going to do it at, like, one of, like, the grindcore and, like, power violence shows here in Edmonton. And we were gonna dub our project Power Silence.
Power Silence, and then mosh during it.
Yeah, aggressive amounts of nothing.
Of crowd kill and nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. No sound, just really mean mug looks on our faces, and just real intently holding our guitars, and that's it.
I would definitely go to that show.
We'll book SQUONK for the first Power Silence Fest.
Perfect. I'm into that. I'll be there.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, I think that just about wraps this up for us, man. So for everyone out there listening, find SQUONK stuff. When you listen to this, there will be links to all of his music wherever. But yeah, I'm sure if you Google SQUONK music, it won't take you very long to find it. But with that, I am gluexsniffer, and this has been my sit-down interview with SQUONK. Thank you so much for talking, man.
Thanks again for having me.
All right, take care, brother.
You too, man.
All right, so I want to thank JM again for sitting down with me across the internet. I will have links to all of SQUONK's stuff down in the description below this video. But for now, we're going to listen to the latest recording, again at the time of this recording, by SQUONK, titled Self-Portrait Loud Noises. So here's that. thank you all so much for listening to the premiere episode of noise music that you can punch walls and fight cops to. This episode has been featuring SQUONK, that is JM out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And until next time, the show's over. Fuck off.